Hi, my name is Phil. I like talking about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss an interesting change in philosophy from the British government, whereby we are now accepting help from the EU to manage a situation that we are incapable of dealing with on our own. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So for the first quarter of 2020, the British government's policies could all be characterised by keeping the EU at arm's length, preferably a Gibbons arm's length. We pretended to negotiate a Brexit deal, but said that we wouldn't join in any EU cooperation on any area. Even if it didn't go against Boris Johnson's stated aims with Brexit, we were not going to join in with any scheme at all if it was the EU scheme. It meant that for the second time since the Brexit referendum, we turned down EU funding to help deal with the consequences of flooding, increasing the misery for those displaced from their homes. It meant that our health department were not allowed to coordinate with other European health departments at the onset of the pandemic. And it meant that we turned down 50,000 ventilators when the NHS was saying that we desperately needed tens of thousands more over the next few weeks. But there seems to be a little bit of a change in the wind for whatever reason. And as many people will know, there are quite a few Britons still stranded abroad who went on holiday whilst there was a global pandemic coming along. It was a little foolish, I feel. But then, to be fair, the Foreign Office, before that point, should have said, actually, do you know what? Can you not leave the country because we might not be able to get you back? So we now do have the situation where people are stranded abroad, can't get back, most notably in Japan and South America. Flights have been grounded across the world, and the government, as I said, was criticised for not telling people to stay in the country much sooner. But we are where we are, and the task for the British government was getting them home when commercial means of doing so was not possible, either because flights were just simply grounded and there was no way of getting a flight commercially out there, or potentially just because of prohibitively expensive increase in prices that some operators imposed when they saw the opportunity before they themselves were grounded. Now, I'm sure it'll come as no surprise that the EU have funds set aside for all sorts of emergencies, and repatriating EU citizens in emergencies such as this is one of them. But the UK had been refusing any help at all from the EU. Naturally, we still pay into these schemes, so it's not an act of charity. We are entitled to these funds, but it wasn't an act of charity to take receipt of tens of thousands of ventilators. We're paying for them, or accessing funding for flood victims to get back into their homes more quickly. But the political decision-making seems to be changing a little. Unheralded, you are unlikely to read about this in the pro-Brexit news media, but the Financial Times has been reporting on the government accepting EU help to get UK citizens flown back using the EU civil protection mechanism. We have apparently already brought some Britons back home using this scheme and are continuing to do so. Reuters was also reporting that the European Commission has approved a £50 billion rescue package for British companies affected by the pandemic to sort of help them through it. Again, I doubt you'll find much mention of it in the British media. No doubt the British government will want to take credit for any rescue measures that they can. So what's happened to change Boris Johnson's mind about accepting aid from EU schemes that we do still have entitlement to, albeit without publicly saying that he's done this? I suppose if you look at some of the circumstances, the longer Britons are left stranded abroad without the government doing anything to help get them back, the worse the headlines are going to be if nothing's happening. The same with businesses going under, and saying that the government are not doing anything to help them if they're not being given any financial assistance at all to keep workers on. Again, it makes for very bad headlines. So you could look at that and argue that perhaps he's made an exception in these cases because it's going to look bad in the press to deny this help, and he knows that we can't do it on our own. But won't the headlines also look very bad if we start getting reports of people needing ventilators not getting ventilators because we don't have enough over the next few weeks? So I don't know, whatever the reasons, what it does do is highlight just how ridiculous it is to suggest that we can cope better on our own than as part of a much larger union of nations. Boris Johnson has tried to go it alone for 3 months. So even though we were still in the transition period and we still had access to all sorts of EU help, he's basically refused them all for 3 months and already buckled under the pressure. And it's just one more reason to extend the transition period until we're in a more stable position to work out what it is we actually want from our relationship with our neighbours. Because could you imagine if this emergency had have hit in 2021 after we'd left the transition period? I mean, that doesn't bear thinking about. But anyway, there we are. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.